Welcome back to the Spotlight. If you were born in 1998, then you are 20 years old this year. You are just as old as the time it has taken from the time we had that terror attack on August 7th up to this point. Douglas Sidialo has just told us in the first part what happened to him, how he was on that road on that fateful morning, and how he lost his eyesight on the Haile Selassie road just next to the Cooperative Bank building. He also told us about his triumph over his inability to see and the major things he has done even without his eyesight. In fact, I believe that he has done a lot more than a lot of us have done even with our eyes open. And we continue talking with him about his experiences post that traumatic event. So it's been 20 years.
Right.
A lot of things have happened since that time. People have talked about compensation. People have talked about reaching out to the victims. Some of the family members, you know, have gone through extreme trauma and issues to do with poverty. What are your thoughts when you think about that particular line, how we treated the victims post the August 7th up to date?
You know, as I shared in the beginning, I served as the chairperson and spokesperson for the victims, fighting for the plights of the orphan children,
Yes.
the widows, the survivors, and those whose lives changed. And that fight even took me all the way to the States, where I discussed and negotiated with the Black Caucus senators to see how the Kenyan victims would be compensated. And I do remember that in 1999, the House of Congress approved of $42 million to go towards supporting Kenya. And a big chunk of this money went towards the rehabilitation of buildings. You see, Ufundi Cooperative
Yes.
were, you know, they got 100 million shillings from that chunk of money. They bought a big piece of house, some place along Mombasa Road. Then the cooperative house was refurbished.
Yes.
Church house was refurbished. The Pioneer just next there, Pioneer House was also renovated, including even the National Bank next door.
Yes.
But one surprising thing is that the lives of those who had been injured or the orphan children, the widows, the widowers, was never compensated. To this day, compensation remains a huge monster. In fact, there has been a lot of myth that the victims were compensated. I remember for one, there was a friend of mine who approached me asking me for almost 10 million shillings because he knew that I am a billionaire because of the stories they hear on news. But I want to tell Kenyans right in the eye, including our president, that there has never been any financial compensation to the victims. They are suffering. They are languishing in poverty. And so many have died as a result of trauma, depression, and just not being able to bear it. I, for one, have been involved in supporting some of those orphan children. Like I remember, the late Rosemary Wanjiru.
Yes, she was very famous. She was
the last woman who was, you know, who died by the rebels.
Yes, she held
I
on.
was able to support Diana, the daughter, at Nairobi Primary. Because when I discovered that Diana didn't have anybody to support her in terms of school fees, and she was walking all the way from her village in Kaberia to the school. So I chose to come in and support her in a small way. I, for one, have been very close to Rosemary Wanjiru. Rosemary Wanjiru was a girl who was 2 years old and she was with the mother in the bus. The mother was pregnant. And the mother went on to give birth to a girl, Caroline, who is Wairimu, who is currently in Form 3 at Mudurwa Girls High School in Limuru. Rosemary, who was 2 years old by that time, got some glass locked in her head. To this day, the glass have not been removed. And now Rosemary, after finishing her fourth form, out of poverty, she went to a hairdressing school. And there she met a boy who made her pregnant. She's now having a child who is 10 months old. So these 3 children are living with their grandmother in a shanty house in Limuru. On Monday, last week, I went visiting with them. And I could experience and see how difficult and how tough life is for this. These are just but some examples amongst those who suffered the bombing of 1998. And there have been so many other cases like this of other bombings, because I'm not just talking about the Nairobi bombing alone.
Yes.
The Paradise bombing victims, like say,
In Kikambala.
Mercy in Kikambala, Mercy Mwagambo, my good friend, the woman receptionist who was blown apart, was actually flown out to Israel for treatment. Had she not been gotten a good Samaritan take her to Israel, she would never have recovered. When she came back, she walked on crutches for so many years, until very recently. Mercy didn't get any support from anybody. But I, for one, with this small adventure activity I do, I was able to support her, start a small business. Mufida Mohammed, whose husband was a taxi driver at the Paradise Hotel, had 3 to 4 children. And then after that, Mufida could not be able to support even her children in school. I, for one, again, with my meager resources, came in to support Mufida's children in terms of school fees. But I could only do it up to some particular level. I could not continue doing it because I don't have enough.
Yeah.
So these are but just some of the cases of people who have been affected by terrorism.
Do you think successive governments have been aloof to this?
Well,
what do you think is the problem?
I think our government, apart from the Njonjo Fund, which many Kenyans did contribute towards, and the Njonjo Fund, the money that was received by this fund, went towards ensuring that the bodies of those who died were transported home, and funeral expenses were covered, medical support for those who were injured were covered. But besides that, some little money went towards helping those who were orphaned, but that money also became a problem because people started grumbling and fighting over the little money that Njonjo had given. So if people were fighting with just for the little, I would imagine if they would have got the billions people are talking about, how terrible it would have been for most families. So Kenyans are very wonderful people. They contribute towards a cause. But our government is aloof, because I feel that the buck stops with our presidents. We have had 3 or almost 4 successive presidents since the bombing. Mzee Taraitich Daniel Arap Moi, he was there when it happened. We have had President Emilio Kibaki. We've had currently Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. But all these 3 presidents have never had them address the plight or even compensation for the victims. Because what the argument of the American government is, that it was the Kenyan government responsibility to compensate its own people. Because when it happened in 9/11, the House of Congress in America came up and compensated all those who were affected by 9/11 attacks, including the 12 Americans who were killed in the August 7th bombings. So our government have never taken that seriously to see to it that victims of terror, not just the 1998 bombings, even including even those who are at the Westgate, like you can imagine, those who are at the Westgate also are suffering. They're struggling. Like including even the nephew of Captain Kungu, that young man who went running for the girlfriend, but because of passion and love for the girlfriend, he got killed.
Yes.
So you can imagine. And because of the love of these two, they were buried in the same coffin.
Yes, they were.
Yeah? Captain Kungu's nephews. And you know who Captain Kungu is, very close to the state. Now, even if the government should come out clean, in the sense that they should introduce a bill in parliament to ensure that victims of terrorism, the past, the present, and the future, should be compensated with the taxpayers' money. It does not matter how little the money can be. but something to wipe off the sweat, the blood, and the suffering of those victims. Because if the government can't take care of its own people, who can take care of them? Our government has never even taken the initiative to pursue the American government to see if there can be something that can be, they can get support of. I remember in 2003, President Kibaki was hosted at the White House when I was in America by the then President Bush. He was there with the lavish English dinner, but nothing ever happened. You can imagine also when the Kenyan-born son became the American president, there was a huge celebration by Kenyan people and the victims that now that their son was at the White House, they are going to get some form of compensation.
Yeah.
But we became more orphaned than the way we thought. In fact, when President Obama came to Kenya, the victims were actually demonstrating, and he sneaked in, you know, to the Memorial Park like a thief and left like a thief. How can you come to your own home and you sneak in and just live like that? It's very sad. Yeah. So what am I saying? I'm not saying that Obama is bad. He's a good man, but he never even addressed the plight of the Kenyan people. We are still suffering. So our presidents have never been that proactive. Maybe this time round, Uhuru will shake hands with Raila again and become proactive on the plight of victims of terror.
He's meeting, they just said today that he's meeting Trump on the 27th.
Yeah, if he's going to meet Trump, let him look Trump right in the eye and tell him about the plight of the Kenyan victims. We are suffering. We are struggling. And many are languishing in poverty. Many have died. So if you are really a man enough, Bwana Uhuru Kenyatta, face Trump and tell him in the eye that Kenyans are struggling and we feel we should be supported. We feel we should be compensated.
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point there, and I believe that they have heard you.
Yes. Even if they won't hear me, the gods in the heavens are hearing.
Yes.
Gods in the heavens are hearing. So if he doesn't hear me, it's up to him.
I hear you, sir. Post this time, currently, what are you involved with doing?
Well, I'm actually involved in many activities. Currently, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Butsal International Investments. We are authorized dealers of computer accessories and hardwares and softwares like Lenovo, HP, and Dell. And we also are authorized dealers of Microsoft, IBM, and many other software products. So I'm also into the agribusiness. I've been a big farmer in sugarcane, though I had a big farm in Western, and one time someone just came and lashed it with fire, but I never gave up. I'm also involved in energy, so we are trying to see how we can do renewable energy in Africa. So besides also, I've been the chairman of the Kenya National Paralympic Committee. I remember I led the Kenyan team to Beijing in 2008, and some of my athletes did this country proud. Like, out of only 13 athletes, I came back with 5 gold medals, 4 silvers, and 4 bronze medals. And one of my athletes, Ambassador Henry Kiprono Kirwa, bagged this country 3 gold medals. And he went on to be named the 2009 UN Person of the Year, UNDP MDG Ambassador. So he's just about a crown jewel of power.
Wow.
I also discovered Samuel Kimani Muchai in Cherangani Hills. And Samuel Kimani Muchai has backed this country a lot of medals. In fact, in Rio 2016, he won this country 2 gold medals by beating the Brazilian, who was highly rated in 5,000 meters and 1,500 meters. But he just crushed him like that. Samuel Kimani Muchai is the 2017 Sports Person of the Year. So I have been all involved in helping athletes with disability discover their potential in sports. Currently, I'm serving as the chairperson of the Kenya Sports Association for the Visually Impaired. And I've only been in office for the last 1 month, but the first 2 athletes to qualify for Tokyo 2020 are my athletes, and they've only qualified within this month I've been in the office. Samuel Kimani Muchai qualified because he got 2 gold medals recently when he was in India, in Bangalore, and Nelly Nasimiu. And they support this, the way they got money, it was not the government money. the government could not raise enough money for these athletes to go to for a qualifier event. But the governor of Trans Nzoia, Haemba, contributed 800,000 shillings, which was used by 5 of these, the 2 guide runners and their coach Ruth, to go to India. And as a result, they qualified for Tokyo 2020.
That's fantastic.
So you can imagine one governor can contribute to qualify 2 athletes. So if many governors would come forward under our government to support our athletes, we can be able to make a mark in Tokyo 2020 because we must qualify these athletes.
True. And we can actually make anybody who is having some sort of, disability really prove that it is not inability.
I'm telling you, our athletes have proved so.
Yeah.
And if they can be given more support,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they'll prove everybody that
The sky
disability is just but.
Is the limit.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. I really wish we could talk more and more. And I'm sure even those who are watching really wish they could continue this conversation.
Yes, thank you.
If we could take away something from this conversation, from the time you lost your eyesight up till now, what would you tell somebody else who is, struggling with a particular loss of any kind of a limb, maybe of eyesight, of hearing? What would you tell somebody who was not born that way, but has had to undergo such a challenge, such as yourself?
The most important thing when something more devastating happens to you is to accept your situation. Accept your blindness, accept your disability, accept your being an orphan or a widow, and move on. It's only by that time when you accept your situation that healing begins. And above all also, hold on your faith in God. If you hold on your faith in God or in Allah or whatever you believe in, your healing would become quite fast. I, for one, God has been my pillar, and he has walked with me this journey. Yeah, my church pastor, Senior Pastor Kalisto Dede, has been very supportive, and all the pastors at Nairobi Baptist, where I congregate. So, my faith in God, he's been my healing power. And friends also that I've associated with, be it in my adventure sports, be it in Paralympic sports, they have also been a healer. So when you get out there to do something, people will stand with you. But when you go hiding in the house and say, yes, I'm blind, I'm physically challenged, I can't do nothing, no one would even notice that you're ever there. But when you get out there and start doing something for yourself, people start seeing what you can be able to. Had I not gotten out cycling, no one would ever have known that Douglas, a poor man from the village in Busia, would become one of the highly rated blind cyclists in this world. No one would ever have known that I can climb a mountain, leave alone climb even Ngong Hills. Yeah? So when you open yourself out and reach out to others, people will hold your hand and will support you to achieve your dreams, your aspirations, and your goals and objectives in life.
Thank you, Douglas. We really appreciate you coming and talk to us. I'm really, really honored to speak to you. You are a great man.
Thank you very much.
And I know that the sky is the limit. There's still so much more to come from you.
God is gracious.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We'll be looking for you even in the latter days and even all the things we have talked about today. Thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Appreciate it.
And we look forward to more engagement in the future.
Thank you very much.
That's a spotlight for tonight, remembering the 1998 terror attack. We just want to say, as we always say, God bless you, good night, take care of yourselves and each other. See you next Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Douglas.